Welcome to Shujin Academy VGM Club. I'm Professor Tom, your faculty sponsor. Today's opening track is School from Shin Megami Tensei If, composed by Tsukasa Masuko. It's a groovy song with a cool bass-driven rhythm, and that's pretty much what this episode is all about. Groovy music that'll let you kick back and vibe. I guess this is sort of a companion piece to episode 25, which was all about music that felt cool. I'm going to kick things off in the first segment with Neon Isotope from Planet Puzzle League, composed by Masanobu Matsunaga. Planet Puzzle League is an absolutely amazing soundtrack. I downloaded it because I liked the soundtrack for Tetris Attack, and it was not what I was expecting. It was way better. Song number 2 is Drawing Game, composed by Tim Follin for Pictionary on the NES. Tim Follin is a great composer for the feel that I'm wanting for this show, and Pictionary is a particularly groovy soundtrack for the NES, so it's no surprise that this episode features 2 tracks from this game. The other one will show up in segment 2. The third song in the block is Castomira Defeated, composed by Motoi Sakuraba for Arcus Odyssey, a game in one of my favorite sub-genres, Super Famicom RPGs that didn't get released in the USA. I like that genre so much, in fact, that there are 4 tracks on today's playlist from that kind of game. See if you can identify all of them by the end. Block number 1's 4th song is Training Mode from the Dreamcast release of The House of the Dead 2, composed by Tetsuya Kawauchi and Haruyoshi Tomita. Or maybe it's actually from The Typing of the Dead, because I'm actually using a rip from The Typing of the Dead, but Typing of the Dead pretty much has the exact same soundtrack as House of the Dead 2. I'm saying that figuring out how to do crediting for VGM can get weird sometimes, is what I'm saying. For the penultimate song in the block, it'll be To the Sea from Legend of Mana for the PlayStation. Composer Yoko Shimomura did a really cool job here of working with the sound of the Mana series from previous games, but bringing it forward into the PlayStation era and still being able to put her own stamp on it. And finally in this block, it'll be Town of Arcs from Brainlord for the Super Nintendo, composed by Masanao Akahori. While Brainlord isn't remembered as fondly as some of the other action RPGs for the SNES, it does have a great soundtrack, and I'm glad to play some tracks from it on my show. Alright, y'all, let's put on some sunglasses and vibe to these tunes. Those songs were Neon Isotope from Planet Puzzle League, composed by Masanobu Matsunaga, Drawing Game from Pictionary on the NES, composed by Tim Follin, Castomira Defeated from Arcus Odyssey on the Super Famicom, composed by Motoi Sakuraba, Training Mode from House of the Dead 2 on the Dreamcast, composed by Tetsuya Kawauchi and Haruyoshi Tomita, To the Sea from Legend of Mana on the PlayStation, composed by Yoko Shimomura, and Town of Arcs from Brainlord on the Super Nintendo, composed by Masanao Akahori. I'm going to kick off my second block of songs with Moonman Fandango from Galactic Pinball on the Virtual Boy, composed by Kenji Yamamoto and Masaru Tajima. This is the very first Virtual Boy song I have played on this show, but it probably won't be the last. I found this soundtrack via the Super Marcato Bros podcast, where they did a whole episode on the Virtual Boy and played several Galactic Pinball songs, and that episode was a great intro to some really cool tracks from Nintendo's Forgotten Console. The second song on the block is Wicked Plan from Persona 5, composed by show favorite Shoji Meguro. I know I play a ton of songs from Persona and Final Fantasy, so I've decided that I'm going to try and take a break from the main games in those two franchises after this episode's over. That said, I could have included about 7 different Persona songs on this episode, because there is a lot of groovy gravy on that soundtrack. The third song in the block is Battle Center from Pokemon Trading Card Game for the Game Boy, composed by Ichiro Shimakura. Put this soundtrack down in the annals of soundtracks for seemingly unimportant side games where the composer went hard and we all benefited. Song IV in this block is Let's Meet Dr. Minchi from Metal Max Returns for the Super Famicom, a fairly short track from an RPG about tanks that sounds very Yellow Magic Orchestra to me, and I mean that as high praise. Once you've heard some YMO, you start to see it all over VGM, kind of like how you see the Beatles' fingerprints all over pop music. And rest in peace to YMO member Ryuichi Sakamoto, who passed away a couple of weeks before I recorded this episode. Now, I said earlier that there were 2 Tim Follin songs from the NES version of Pictionary on today's show, and Professor Tom keeps his promises, because the 5th song here is Minigame Theme 2. Tim Follin is so good at that NES composing, y'all. Finally in the block, it'll be Unused Song 1 from the Flintstones on the Super Nintendo, composed by Keith Tinman and Jonathan Dunn. I like to think that these guys were in a club with Dean Evans making awesome music for crappy licensed games because they had to let their spirits fly free and groove. And if that's not true, don't ruin the dream for me. Now, Professor Tom says, let there be groove, and so groove there shall be. Those songs were Moonman Fandango from Galactic Pinball, composed by Kenji Yamamoto and Masaru Tajima, Wicked Plan from Persona 5, composed by Shoji Meguro, Battle Center from the Pokemon trading card game, composed by Ichiro Shimakura, Let's Meet Dr. Minchi from Metal Max Returns, composed by Satoshi Katakura, Minigame Theme 2 from Pictionary on the NES, composed by Tim Follin, and Unused Song 1 from the Flintstones for the Super Nintendo, composed by Keith Tinman and Jonathan Dunn. And now for a word from our sponsor. Hey guys, do you have a dusty game console? Is your old Super Nintendo turning from its original pristine light gray to a yellow ribbon-issued urine? Are you failing to score with the ladies because your game systems don't look as beautiful and pristine as the bathroom in your swinging bachelor pad? You need Gamescaped. The revolutionary new Gamescaped Conblower 3000 uses a specialized aerosol gel along with a custom hyper vacuum that'll both blow and suck your consoles, making them look shiny and clean so that you can impress the ladies. Just go to Gamescape.com and use the offer code PROFTOM 38104812709419N9AN PEKWLCIN 3802-1H4 at symbol #9180KNRMDQ in #MONDSS3928 to get 20% off your first order. Thanks to Gamescaped for sponsoring our show. Now, back to the music. We're into the final entry in today's trilogy of groovy game music blocks, and we'll start it out with Blind City from Persona Q2, composed by Atsushi Kitajo. The Persona Q games are essentially Ecchi and Odyssey, but reskinned with Persona characters, and the soundtracks deliver the quality that you'd expect from both those franchises. Song number 2 in our Sonic Brick is Password Screen, another song from the Flintstones for the SNES, composed by Keith Tinman and Jonathan Dunn. This song sounds nothing like Cavemen, or dinosaur-driven technology, or the Great Gazoo, and I am here for it, because it is way cooler than listening to any of those things would be. Our third song in the block is Goldenrod Game Corner from Pokemon Crystal, composed by Junichi Masuda, Go Ichinose, and Morikazu Aoki. This is actually a song from the game Slot Machine Parlor, if my research is correct, and it is cool as hell. Shout out to my son SavePoint Sam for suggesting that I dig into the Pokemon soundtracks for some great tunes. The fourth song in the block is from Yu Yu Hakusho Makyo Toitsuden for the Mega Drive, and it's called Imbalanced Kiss, or maybe it's named Unbalanced Kiss. It's hard to tell with translations sometimes. Anyway, this game is licensed from classic shonen anime Yu Yu Hakusho, and this track is based on one of that show's ending themes, only the way they've reworked the song for the Genesis sound chip gives it a great dark synthwave groove. I like this quite a bit, so I'll definitely credit composers Hiro Takahashi, Aki Hata, Matsuko Mawatari, and TKO for making it sound awesome. And finally in our block, it's Water Lily from Crusader of Senti for the Genesis, composed by Motokazu Shinoda. This track is super funky, and it's a great way to close out our gargantuan gathering of grooves. Here comes some music. Those songs were Blind City from Persona Q2, composed by Atsushi Kitajo, Password Screen for the Flintstones on the SNES, composed by Keith Tinman and Jonathan Dunn, Goldenrod Game Corner from Pokemon Crystal for the Game Boy, composed by Junichi Masuda, Go Ichinose, and Morikazu Aoki, Imbalanced Kiss, or maybe Unbalanced Kiss, from Yu Yu Hakusho Makyo Toitsuden for the Genesis, composed by Hiro Takahashi, Akihata, Matsuko Mawatari, and TKO, and Water Lily from Crusader of Senti for the Genesis, composed by Motokazu Shinoda. And that's the show. If you want to reach me, you can find me on Mastodon at Shujin Academy VGM Club at mastodon.coffee or on Discord as Professor Tom 7512. I'm also on both Tumblr and Instagram as Shujin Academy VGM Club. All my links can be found on my Linktree site at linktr.ee/Shujin Academy. Email me at shujinacademyvgmclub@gmail.com, and you can find my channel on YouTube by searching for Shujin Academy VGM Club or use the link in the show notes. Please leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you find this episode. Look for new episodes on Thursdays whenever I get them done, which is typically once or twice a month. Special thanks for this episode goes out to fellow VGM podcaster Jameson of Bar Silence Podcast for contributing cover art. You can and should find Bar Silence wherever you download podcasts, and check out his website at barsilence.com. I should also do a little cross-promotion with my VG podcasting brethren. I was a special guest on last week's episode of VG Emporium, talking to host Rage Cage all about music from games that involve investigation, which was a lot of fun to do. And I'll be making a special little guest appearance on an upcoming episode of REVGM, my buddy Martyrous's show about game music that has been rearranged, reorchestrated, and remade, so look for that. I've got one more groove to play us out, and it's Kichi Joji, composed by Tsukasa Masuko for Shin Megami Tensei for the Super Famicom. This track was reworked as a part of the Persona 5 Royal soundtrack, but I think the original fits the feel of today's show just a little bit better. Thanks for listening. I'm Professor Tom, and I'll see you next time on Shujin Academy VGM Club.